Kayo'y nakikinig sa SBS Filipino.
Maraming kultura sa Australia ang unti-unting niyayakap na ng mga Pilipino na kinikilala ito bilang ikalawang tahanan. Isa na dito ang pag-inom ng wine. Kung sa Pilipinas, itinuturing na sosyal at pangmayaman ang inuming ito, dito sa Australia, bahagi ang wine ng mga okasyon, event, picnic at simpleng salo-salo. Sa New South Wales, ang Hunter Region ang isa sa pinakakilalang lugar ng mga turista para sa mga wine tasting tours. Dito naman napiling manirahan ng Filipino-Australian sommelier o isang bihasa sa wine na si Siegfrid Bacani.
Hunter Valley is got a special place for me because it's an interesting region. It's not near the coast and it's actually quite hot. So what that means is that the wines styles that are predominant there because of this weather condition called the diurnal range, and it's cool at night, it lends itself well to things like Shiraz and Semillon.
Bata pa lang nang nag-migrate ang pamilya ni Siegfrid sa Australia, pero nananatili ang kanyang pagkilala sa kulturang Pilipino.
I am Filipino-Australian. I identify as both, and that's very important to me. So I was born in the Philippines to Kapampangan parents. And I called that out because they were both from agricultural families. One side grew the rice, and then the other side traded the rice. So comes from a hard life. We left the Philippines in the late 1980s after revolution. Since then, I've grown up in Australia and then finished my degree at University of Western Sydney.
Nagtrabaho siya bilang bartender noon at dito niya unang natikman ang wine.
It was such a memorable experience because it was so different from anything that I've tried before. I grew up in a Filipino household. We had beer. We didn't drink wine. And it had this strange apple citrus flavor with a really long finish, which was then described to me as the concept of dry.
Nang magkaroon ng interes sa inumin, nagtungo pa siya sa France para lang pag-aralan ang paggawa nito. Ito rin ang naging daan para makapasok siya sa malalaking kumpanya at brands ng alak.
And so from then I really fell in love with wine. And not until, I went to the United Kingdom to work for Bacardi and Jack Daniels. And then when I came back, I ended up joining Moet Hennessy, and it's the wine and spirits division. And so I was working for Chandon, the winery down in the Yarra Valley, Cape Mentelle in Western Australia, and I just fell deeper into love with Australian wine.
Dahil sa kasanayan sa industriya, bumuo si Siegfrid ng sariling kumpanya, tampok ang iba't ibang wine mula Hunter Valley.
7,000 Islands is a passion project of mine. I think we started in 2019. And firstly, with the name, it's very important. So Philippines famously has over 7,000 islands. But little known fact is so does Australia. Australia has over 7,000 islands. They have one big island and many small ones.
Hindi lang basta Australian wine ang nais niyang maipakilalang produkto dahil dinadala naman niya sa Australia ang mga Filipino-flavored na alak mula Pilipinas tulad ng lambanog at ube-flavored liquor. Nais ni Siegfrid na maging bahagi rin ng hapagkainan ng mga Pinoy ang wine. Kaya para maipaunawa ang nilalaman ng inumin sa mga Pilipino, nakasulat sa Tagalog ang label at paglalarawan ng laman ng bawat bote.
I really wanted to appeal to the Filipino, whether in Australia or in the Philippines. So our wines are described in Tagalog, both in terms of description of the wine, like aroma, how it smells, and tasting notes, how it tastes, as well as a food pairing with Filipino food versus a red wine and a steak.
Nito lang 15 ng Oktubre, sa pakikipagtulungan ng Filipino Food Movement Australia at pamana sa Chatswood, isinagawa nila ang pagpapares ng mga paboritong pagkaing Pinoy tulad ng sinigang na hipon, laing, lumpia at daing na bangus sa iba't ibang klase ng wine. Karamihan sa mga dumalo tulad ni Consul Emmanuel Donato Guzman ng Philippine Consulate Office ng Sydney ang namangha sa kakaibang pares ng wine at Filipino food na kanilang natikman.
This is my first time and it is a great idea. No one would have thought to have wine with Filipino food. Normally we'd have Filipino food with beer and other drinks, but this is great. It just shows the potential of Philippine food and of the wines that 7,000 Islands is making.
Hindi rin akalain ng iba pang dumalo, mga food vloggers at influencers, na pwede palang maging katandem ng wine ang mga pagkaing madalas ipares lamang sa soft drinks.
My full name is Rafael De Leon. The perfect match for tonight, I feel like, is the sinigang, especially if you have the prawns and then you chase it after with Chardonnay. It's an amazing match.
Para sa akin, the surprise was the Shiraz with the laing. That was a revelation. That was incredible. You wouldn't have known that it will match.
I think what we're trying to accomplish is recognizing that Filipino food can be elevated and has such diversity. We can do so much with it and enjoy it.
Ayon kay Siegfrid, ang pang-amoy ay isa sa mga tumutukoy sa iba't ibang flavors na nangingibabaw sa iniinom na wine. Ito rin ang naghahatid sa panlasa ng alaala ng mga pagkain at prutas sa inumin.
So to give your listeners some courage to try Filipino food with wine, it's okay to make mistakes, but it's also you're never wrong. So when you smell the wine and you think it smells like some peanut or rosas, it's correct because your body tells you, I recognize this smell. In my French wine training, they would say the Western training is important because they've been guardians of wine and formalized it in a way. But to make wine more accessible, you need to make it diverse and accessible in other languages. And there is nothing wrong with describing wine with your food pantry and your personal experience.
Sa datos ng Roy Morgan's Alcohol Consumption Report noong 2021, halos kalahati ng populasyon ng Australia ay umiinom ng wine o may 46.3%. Pagdating sa produksyon, ang Australia naman ang ikalima sa pinakamalaking exporter ng wine sa buong mundo. Mahigit 100 klase ng ubas sa Australia na nakatanim sa malalawak na rehiyon sa mga estado. Pero dahil sa pagbabago ng klima, humaharap sa malaking hamon ang mga grape farmers at winemakers na tulad ni Siegfrid.
So this year we had a lot of rain. We got through all of the white pickings or the harvest for white wine, which is predominantly Chardonnay in Hunter Valley. And then halfway through, I don't know if you remember in February, March, there was epic amounts of rain. The Shiraz, the red wine was just destroyed. The rain beat us. And so all of that effort, 1 year's vintage, all of that investment was just destroyed. And so, if you can find a good drop of 2021 vintage Shiraz from Hunter Valley, keep it because it's quite rare. And that's where the reflection of the wine, of its environment, the weather, its location, its geography really comes into play.
Umaasa ang mga industriya na makakabawi sila sa susunod na taon kung magiging maganda ang panahon para sa mga tanim na ubas at makakapag-produce ng mga vintage bottles.
To explain vintage to our listeners, what that means is that you plant the grape today and then 365 days later or 1 year later, you're able to harvest it. Obviously, you can leave it there longer and the flavor profile changes, but usually you pick it after 1 year. And that year, so this year is 2022. If it's picked next year, you call that the 2022 vintage.
Sa ngayon, patuloy ang paghikayat ni Siegfrid sa mga Pilipino na huwag matakot subukan ng iba't ibang inumin na maaring ipare sa mga pagkaing Pilipino. Bukas din siya sa pagbibigay ng mga impormasyon tungkol sa Australian wine.
Part of our goal is really to help to demystify wine for Filipinos everywhere. Filipino food is amazing. Australian wine is amazing, but together, I'm getting chills just thinking about it, thinking of some of the matches. It's going to be awesome.
Muling pakinggan ang buong ulat at panayam sa aming website. Ako si Edinel Magtibay para sa SBS Filipino.
I-like, i-share, mag-comment, sundan ang SBS Filipino sa Facebook.